Hello and welcome to Top Story. A week after 9 people died and 30 were wounded when Israeli troops boarded a flotilla of ships carrying aid for Gaza, international condemnation of the operation shows little sign of letting up, not least in the United States and Europe, where there are growing demands for Israel to abandon its blockade of Gaza. A spokesman for the White House Security Council said of the blockade that the current arrangements were unsustainable and must be changed, while it's expected that the European Union will soon submit a proposal for lifting the blockade. So, might Israel's lethal raid on the aid flotilla inadvertently accelerate the demise of a policy that the Israeli government considers essential to its security, but which has earned it widespread international condemnation? Joining me now to share his views on the subject is Ofer Bronstein, who's the president of the International Center for Peace in the Middle East. Thanks very much for being on the program.
Good morning.
Pressure is building up on Israel, first of all, for an international inquiry into the events concerning the raid on the flotilla. Yesterday, French President Nicolas Sarkozy called Mr. Netanyahu to put pressure on him, to try to persuade him to accept it. Is it going to happen?
I know that yesterday President Sarkozy and Prime Minister Netanyahu had a conversation. I know that the international community is requiring, as well as the Israeli people and the Israeli politicians are requiring for transparent inquiry, and I do believe that the Israeli government will have an inquiry with maybe some international observer on it. But as we know in the past, usually when you have an inquiry done by a judge in Israel, it's a very serious one, and many politicians in the past paid a very heavy price. We saw it after Sabra and Shatila. We saw it after the beginning of the second Intifada, where Mr. Ben-Ami lost his job as minister. So we can have confidence that the Israeli will have a transparent and impartial inquiry, and it has to be done. The international community, as you said it before, and especially the Europeans, the Spanish, who are president now, and Mr. Kushner yesterday, asked for the end of the blockade and proposed that European forces will be on the border, as they are already, to take care of and to reopen the port of Gaza, and they will be taking care of the security of the goods entering into Gaza.
Before we move on to the issue of the blockade, just stay for a moment to do with the idea of an international inquiry. The Israelis are very much opposed to the idea of an international element. They, as you suggest, they want to keep it domestic. Is that likely to be acceptable to the international community, do you think?
I believe so.
Particularly in the Arab world.
Listen, I do believe the formality of how this inquiry is going to be conducted has to be finalized between Israel and the UN, the United States, the European Union. On the principle, Israelis wants to have this inquiry. It will take place. In the past inquiry done by Israel, as I said, in the beginning of the second Intifada, after the Kippur War, after Sabra and Shatila, were conducted by Israeli judge, and the results were very transparent, very serious, and many politicians paid their political life after this inquiry. So I do believe that the formality will have to be put together, but an inquiry will take place, and it will be a transparent one.
Okay, pressure growing on Israel to do something about the blockade. Even the Americans now saying that it just doesn't work. Something has to change.
Yeah.
The Europeans have suggested that they might play a more active role in controlling aid flows into Gaza. Is that going to convince, do you think, the Israelis?
Listen, I do believe that the blockade has to end. I do believe that the border of Gaza by sea and from Rafah and from Israel has to be controlled, so weapon doesn't enter to Gaza. I do believe that Hamas has to change his rhetoric and his attitude, has to recognize Israel and not to attack Israel from Gaza. I do believe that the soldier Shalit needs to be released. I do believe that in a moment of very strong crisis, as we are in it now, we can have a very strong and serious opportunities as well. If the international community, the Arab world, the Turkish were playing a role in the last few months in the Middle East, the American, the European, as it was said before, will take the bullet by the horn, as it says, seriously now. I do believe that some serious opportunities are ahead of us on the process between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, on the release of Gaza, on the ending of the blockade, on reopening the port of Gaza, on releasing the soldiers Shalit, and on going back into the peace process seriously and fast.
You suggested earlier on that the support inside Israel itself for lifting the blockade.
Yes, absolutely. The Israeli people don't want to see this picture. The Palestinian people in Gaza cannot be punished collectively anymore. It's close to 2.2 million people closed, and it's unacceptable. Their leadership at the Hamas has to change their rhetoric, has to change their position, and recognize Israel and end any violence action against Israel. Israel has
it's sort of a catch-22 situation.
No, I do believe that the Turkish and the Arab country can put pressure on the Hamas. The international community is putting, and the Israeli people are putting.
Hamas should act first, do you think?
I think that everybody has to act now.
Yeah.
The blockade has to end. European forces will have to control the borders to Gaza. We have to reopen the port of Gaza for a free flow of goods and of people into Gaza. We have to make sure that weapons don't enter Gaza. We have to make sure that the peace process, fragile peace process that just restarted a few weeks ago between the Israeli and the Palestinian Authority, is going back into track. And we have to make sure and to try the best we can to bring the Hamas into political track, not to take out the Hamas for violent and terrorist action that they are promoting for the last years into political
that sounds eminently sensible, but how much support for that idea is there within the Israeli government?
I do believe that in the Israeli public opinion, the voices are very strong today, and even in the Israeli government, many ministers declared yesterday in the weekly reunion of the government that they are for the end of the blockade. The political voices are being raised very strongly. The media are talking about it very strongly. This is what's happened last week is arming very strongly the image of Israel. It's arming the possibility for all of us to go back into peace process. It's no good for nobody. So as I said, I do believe that we have serious opportunity to go ahead in the next few weeks. We have to do it fast. We have to do it together. The Arab community, the Turkish government, Egypt, it's the European who are a very important role to play, and certainly the American. We have to move forward.
As you suggested, the blockade is harming the international reputation and prestige of Israel, but how much does it contribute to the security of Israel? Because the Israeli government would say it's essential.
Listen, the security of Israel, it's not negotiable. The blockade has to end and to allow goods, free flow goods, to enter and exit Gaza. Absolutely, the weapons should not be allowed to enter into Gaza. And as the Europeans are proposing, the Spanish and the French yesterday, the Europeans are committed to take care of the borders and to make sure that the weapons don't enter Gaza. Maybe the Turkish can even be an observer in this kind of forces to make sure that the people of Gaza are not being punished, they are breathing, they live freely, but without weapon in Gaza. No need for
what's
weapon in Gaza.
What's the bottom line here for the Israeli government to accept an end to the blockade?
I think that international community have to ensure that weapons won't enter Gaza. International community have to push Israeli and Palestinian to resume peace talk, and efforts have to be made to release the Caporal Shalit being held in inacceptable condition in Gaza in the last 4 years.
Okay, and on that we have to end it. Thanks very much to our guest, Ofer Bronstein. Please do join us again tomorrow for another edition of Top Story here on France 24. Goodbye for now.